Okay, we kind of have a game, but it's not very interesting because there's no obstacle. There's no challenge to it. We've got a little bird. He flies around. He moves around the page. And there's nothing for him to really avoid, nothing for him to hit. So he just is kind of there. So I want to make it a little bit more interesting and challenging. And I'm also going to set the default position to be coming off of the top at 100 pixels. So that will default the bird fairly high up instead of coming off the bottom. So a little minor adjustment there. So going into where we start the game, we need to add in our obstacles. And the way that we can do that, and again, trying to be as dynamic as possible, let's try that out. And we'll start out with player pipe. So this is the starting pipe that we're going to have, and how much spacing we want to have between them. So this can be value in pix, and I'll show you how we're going to use these variable values. So the spacing is going to be between each pipe, let's say 400 pix between each one. And now we need to determine how many we need. So let's create a variable, call it how many, of course. And we're going to do a little bit of math here. So taking the JavaScript math floor, we're going to round this one down. And we're going to calculate out how much game area offset width value divided by, let's make this bigger. So we're going to divide this value by our spacing. And what this is going to return is, it's going to return us back a value that will calculate how many we want to create. So I'll show you how that works. How many? So whatever the width of it, how many 400 pic slots are going to fit in there is what we're going to output into the console. And we see that once we hit the start, and it's going to be right up at the top. So far we can only put one in there. Let's make it wider. Start. This time we got 2. So maybe we don't want 400 spacing, we'll do 300 spacing. And that will give us a few more pipes within that spacing. I'm also going to shrink down the screen size as well. We'll shrink down the screen size as well so we can fit even more in there. So try that out one more time. I'm also going to get rid of these console messages as we don't really need them anymore. So now we hit start and we see we can do 3 pipes there, can fit on the screen. So let's set those up, and as we calculate out how many we need, we can do this with a simple for loop. So starting out at x equals 0, and within here we'll have a function that will build pipes. And we'll pass in the player pipe value. I probably don't actually need that, but we'll calculate it out with the space. So this is the argument that we're going to pass in to that function. I'll clean this up a bit. And now let's create that build pipes function. And we're passing in our start position of the pipe. So this is where the first pipe is going to start. And let's grab some variables. So our total height value that we have to work with is coming from game area. And we're using offset height for that. We've got our total of our game area. So again, calculating out our screen size is going to help us with positioning. And we're trying to just make it as dynamic as possible. We'll increment player pipe, so increase that. And so now it looks like we're ready to create those pipes. So and we need to have one for the top and one for the bottom, so we'll create pipe 1. I'll make this big using the document, creating a div, and we'll apply the styling afterwards. So pipe, and these have to move as well. So we need to have a dynamic start position. So we're taking our start position that we're passing it in, plus the total width. So that will move it all the way over to the right side off screen. Do the class list, we'll do it a little bit different. We'll do class list and then add. And we'll add a class of pipe. And we'll style those afterwards. Next with pipe, let's add some inner HTML to it. So adding an inner HTML, whatever the player pipe value is. So we can see which one they are, and they're going to constantly be incrementing and count. So again, taking that pipe 1 object, let's set some height for it. And this can be random height, math random. So it could be anywhere to, let's say, 350. And to make it dynamic, we should as well use that off of the height. But for now, let's set a value there, and then we can adjust this later if we need to. So positioning the height of that element. So now we've calculated out and set value to that. So that's setting the height of it. We're also taking the pipe object and using style. So again, setting our style. So where it's going to be positioned, the left position. And we're going to use this value in order to move it, just like we were moving the bird. And the pipe one is going to be right up to the top. So that's not going to be changing. So this is always right at the top. So it's 0 pixels there. And let's take that X position of pipe. So we use the same format that we use for the bird. So we'll have an X and a Y. We could also assign an ID to it because they're all going to be different. So if we do need to return back the ID value, we're going to have the player pipe value as the ID. And for now, let's take our pipe and we'll set a background color. And we can always adjust this later on to make it a little bit more interesting. So once we've created it, we need to append it to our game area. So we're appending the pipe1 object, just as we've done with the other elements. So next we need to create the bottom pipe. So the starting position is going to be the same, but there's going to be spacing in between where this one ends at the top, and we need to create some spacing. We're going to create this as a random space value, and using math floor and then math random in JavaScript. We'll make a space up to 250 and with a minimum, or up to 400, but with a minimum of 150. So that's the formula for that. So it's going to give us a variable value anywhere from 150 to 399. So now we can create our second pipe, and a lot of this is going to be very similar. So let's add that in, and we're going to simply create pipe 2, and this is going to be a div as well. We need to have its start position, and this start position is going to be whatever the start position of pipe 1 is. We're going to add a class to pipe. We can also update the inner HTML. The total height of it, so this is going to be calculated out, so it's not random anymore, because this is all depending on how much space we have left. So let's calculate that height out. And we're going to be using the value for pipe number 1. So I'm just going to make sure that I'm updating these to be pipe 2. So the total height that we have available, so that's the one that we set right in the beginning. And subtracting the height of pipe 1. And then also subtracting the height of pipe space. So that's that random value. So taking this calculation, and then we're going to add pix to it. So this is essentially going to give us how much space is left after we take into account this one coming off at the top, this space for the bird to fly through, and then this is going to be what's left, and we're going to fill that up with the pipe. And instead of top, we're going to set it at right at the bottom because the pipe 2 is sitting right at the bottom. The left position is going to be the same as pipe 1 start, so that's fine. We can keep that the same. The X position as well as the pipe 1, and the ID can also be the pipe 1 start. And before we try it, let's make sure we update that pipe 2 style. And this is pipe 1 style. And before we try that, let's create a class for pipe. So going up to our style, let's do a quick class for pipe. And we need to set a default width. Also position is absolute, so we're moving those. We can text align, center, and now let's try that. So refresh and outputting it. And I'm going to drag it over, and you can see that we created all 3 of the pipes that we want to make use of. So coming up next, our next objective is to make them move. And that's what we're going to have to do within that play game area. And before we conclude, let's make a few adjustments to our score so that it overlaps on top of the pipes. So we'll do a position of absolute, setting its width to 100% of the screen size, and then also adding in a Z index of 100. So this way it's going to be on top of the pipes. And we're ready to move on to the next lesson.